Great. So welcome everyone to the Interior Design Career Roundtable, organized by the Interior Design Program and Career Services of the School of Architecture at the University of Texas at Austin. Great. So welcome everyone to the Interior Design. We have some echoes. We'll have to mute YouTube. The School of Architecture has been hosting a series of roundtable discussions. And this is actually the third career discussion. We had one with our planning program, landscape architecture, and we're very, very happy that you're able to join us for the interior design one. I wanted to thank all the participants for making the time to be here. We really have an all-star lineup from all over the United States. And I also want to thank everyone who is joining us on YouTube. If you have any questions for the participants, please participate in the chat on YouTube. And in the second half of the session, we will choose some of the questions that maybe are not represented by the discussion that happens earlier on. So, and thank you to Julie Latcham, the Director of Career Services at the School of Architecture, for really making this space for all of us to gather here and brainstorm with and on behalf of our students and graduates. Julie, did you want to say a few words about career services before we get going?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to, again, echo thank you to all of our panelists. I'm meeting with students who have lost internships or recent graduates who had jobs being canceled or postponed at the moment. So we really appreciate your willingness to come and just give them advice and input on what you're seeing in the practice. And so we're really grateful.
Okay, and so the tagline for this event is really a discussion about career trajectories for our graduates in this anything but ordinary moment in time. And I think that the longer that this moment lasts, the more urgent this conversation is. So we are really looking at career trajectories, but really kind of trying to zero in on behalf of our students on employment and employability and what we can do as a community to help support our current students as they envision their futures and as our graduates kind of encounter the market. Julie, maybe now so we can see everyone's faces, we can, remove the graphics. So this is what I'll do. I will introduce each participant by name, but then I think it would be really great if each of you just introduced yourselves to our audience so that they can kind of connect voices and faces to names. And so with us today, we have Primo Orpilla from O+A in San Francisco. You're muted, Primo.
I'm Primo Orpilla, co-founder of Studio +A in San Francisco, and I have actually taught at your institution, your wonderful institution, and I have several graduates from your institution. So O+A loves UT Austin students. So yeah, that's who I am.
Thank you so much. We love hearing that and knowing that. We have Robin Osler from FXCollaborative in New York.
Hi, Robin Osler. I am the studio director for interiors for FXCollaborative, but prior to that, I actually had my own firm, architecture firm for 23 years, and I've also taught extensively and was on a review at UT Austin and know a number of your faculty who were colleagues of mine, so I'm a huge fan as well.
Thank you so much for being with us, Robin. We also have Jennifer Kolstad from Ford Motor Company in Detroit.
That's me. Hi, everybody. Yeah, my role is Global Design Director of Ford Motor Company, and I'm also the chair of the National Board of Directors for the American Society of Interior Designers. And I sit on that board with one of your professors, Tammy Glass, proudly. So, you know, we have a lot of insights and information that we take from your school. Very happy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, and it's very nice to meet you. We have Brian Stromquist from Gensler, San Francisco.
Hey everyone, I'm Brian. Like Igor said, I am in Gensler in San Francisco, where I lead our regional workplace practice for technology, for our technology clients. I'm also a native Texan from Houston, so have fond memories of sort of going to Austin as a high schooler in the 90s and seeing friends. And so I'm happy to be back with you virtually, even though I've been in San Francisco for a long time.
It's very nice that you can join us, Brian. We have Marlon Orr from Objects in General in New York. Hi, Marlon.
Hey, Marlon Orr, Objects in General, dealer of very special objects from the Bauhaus period.
Thank you so much for being able to join us. It's really great. And then from Austin, we have Laura Britt, a dear friend of the school and a member of the school's advisory board, and an Austin superstar.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you. Thanks, Igor. It's great to be here among such a great group of people talking about important topics today, right, for our students. Yes, we are based here in Austin. I'm the founder of Britt Design Group, and we are an intentionally diversified commercial and residential firm, which we can talk more about later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. And then we have Laura Lewi, who's actually a graduate of our Bachelor's of Interior Design program, who is now a senior designer at RTKL Callison in New York. Hi, Laura.
Hi guys. Yes, Igor and Clay were both my professors. I graduated about, and I found my job at the career fair, Texas. Very happy to be here. I work in New York now, and I moved about 3 days after I graduated, doing retail architecture.
Well, it's very nice to see you. It's been too long. I'm really glad that you were able to join us. And then from the School of Architecture, we have Professor Clay Odom, who actually teaches interior design practice. And so he will actually, he has been talking to our students, figuring out what are some of the pressing questions that they are dealing with. So welcome, Clay. I didn't know if you want to say a few words before we get started.
No, thanks so much. And thanks to all of our panelists. This is really exciting and looking forward to the discussion. Thanks so much.
So this is the format. The questions that have been circulating around, we will try to spend, the next hour generating a conversation around those questions. I kind of went through them, and just as a prompt, I have tried to distribute them evenly, but that by no means is that a script. I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate so that we can hear a range of positions on the kinds of issues that we are dealing with. Then Clay, in the second half, will ask some questions on behalf of students. And then at the tail end of that, we will check in and see what questions might be popping up on YouTube. And so Julie will be kind of choosing some of those. We'll see what happens. And so for those of you, again, that are on YouTube, please be chatty. It will make our conversation here on Zoom on this grid much more interesting and hopefully more useful for the students. So, are we ready? Okay, so maybe to begin this conversation about this kind of extraordinary moment in time that we're in and relative to the field of interior design, I'll ask a question, and so maybe Primo and Laura Britt can kind of help us kick off this conversation. And so the question is, as firms are reacting to recent events, how is their approach to hiring changing?
So I think Primo's still muted. So I can speak for us and what I'm hearing a little bit with some of our national colleagues. You know, we are still interested in top talent. I think I could probably guess most people on this call are, right? We sense that although things can be a bit quiet right now on the commercial side of things, we expect there to be a pent-up demand when this is over. And so we're still poised to talk to talented people and to get to know them during this time period. This is a good dating period, if you will, right? Get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Britt.
No, it's okay. I would just say what I was going to add to that is that while many of us may not be in a position where we're ready to take someone on full time, we are seeing more and more project-based engagements with designers. And so I would encourage students, don't shy away from that kind of engagement. It's okay. It's okay to get to know each other on a project by project basis and to try out the engagement, try out the relationship with the firms. So I'll just stop there and let Primo jump in from that point.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're still looking. We were lucky we haven't had to furlough, lay anybody off at this point. Some of the projects were able to continue on. That wasn't the same for everybody. And I can't say that we won't be able to do that for forever, but there's a lot of, with the event that we're going through, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think as designers, I mean, we're here to kind of solve those problems. This is kind of our territory, lobbies, common areas, building entrance. These are the kind of the things that we would have to deal with. There's just a pause from the end user in terms of what they want to do. I mean, they're just like, they're not sure what to do because there's so much so much confusion. So, but I think you're right. I think there's a pent up, and there's going to be like a lot of consulting needed in the next, I don't know, 6 months to a year just to redesign spaces. So I would stay on the phones. I would try to, I know an internship is tough right now because there's no office to go to.
Right.
We had the problem. We had interns lined up, and there's nowhere for them to go. And it's tough enough controlling 40 people on a Zoom meeting, and then you had another person who you can't put anywhere. So, but I would stay vigilant and just continue to try to put yourself out there, and do informational interviews, find out what's going on. This has really kind of thrown the design industry into, we're trying to search for a solution. So try to learn about some of the things that are being done in the healthcare industry. Be very up to date on that, because you may get called in to solve a problem, and the more you know, the better you'll fit on a team.
I would totally agree with that. And to tag on to what Primo was just saying there, I think this is a really great time for students to continue their education, continue their learning, especially related to health and wellness. As locals know, we just finished building, unfortunately, our new office building, and modeled it after the well building program, and are pursuing well building certification. So I would highly encourage students, get yourself up to speed on these certifications, get yourself up to speed on well building guidelines, of course, living, building, or LEED, all the other things that are out there. But health and wellness is at the core of well, and I think that's really something we all need to be very much up to speed on, how building science impacts human health.
Yep, in total agreement.
I think that this is actually very helpful and a very good segue to the next question that we're hoping Robin and Laura Lewi can focus on. And the question is, what are some of the skills that recent graduates can bring to the workplace that are particularly valuable at this moment and moving forward? I think that that's always kind of a question for students who are at this moment of transition, is that what is it from the kind of academic context or with where they are that might be seen as valuable at this very moment?
Well, to be purely technical about it, I think one of the skills that you could use this time to develop and really hone in on are your technical skills, actually. Because, and for example, in our office, we use Revit for a lot of our projects, and it's not something that is, having taught myself, you know, I know it's not something that is super emphasized in academic programs, but you can't discount it, because if somebody comes to the table with that skill already well under their belt, it makes them really valuable to us. Obviously, that's not everything, you know, it's the design sensibility. I think also we're finding that flexibility, I think this sort of dovetails into what Britt and Primo were saying about, you know, remaining open and sort of learning about health and wellness and things like that. If you can come to the office to an interview or to a conversation already with the knowledge and the skills of the technical skills, but also the ability to sort of make something out of nothing, you know, then we're going to really want to talk to you. I think, and getting those kinds of skills sometimes means you have to step outside your comfort zone a little bit, and you may have to look into, and I know this is going to be a conversation a little later, but maybe it's about dipping into something else that's somewhat related to our profession, but that teaches you something that you can bring to the table. And that can be many, many things. You know, Marlon is here and he is in the furniture and design world. And, you know, just, I think you have to remain open. And I'm a big, strong believer of there is nothing that you can do to not learn a skill, you know? I mean, I think you just have to look at every single thing that you do as an opportunity to develop something that you can bring to the table. So, I mean, for us, it's really that technical skill, but also the ability to be incredibly flexible, but also, you know, in a way, it's not really a skill, but it's the confidence and the strength to bring your own sensibility to the table.
Just to jump off of that, right now, a lot of our clients are expecting us or wanting us to develop these thought pieces that kind of come from retail experts as a retail designer. And so being able to what interests you and what is going on in the market right now as this is developing is so important and would be so helpful. Also just understanding different cultures and how they're going to react internationally. I think travel has been one of the largest developments for me personally as a designer. We've stores all over the world, and being able to experience those is like being able to immerse yourself in that culture for that particular in Kuwait who are masked. Being able to go to that place you can't really match, but understanding other people and being able to do research about that, and then coming to a firm and being able to express that you understand people and how they work and can interact with each other, I think is really important. But definitely take the time to teach yourself. All of the technical skills are super important as well, like even PowerPoint. A lot of the C-suite level are now having the time to co-create. So learning those little technical skills, like teaching myself PowerPoint was something that happened during COVID, which I kind of never expected. Instead of the fancy InDesign and Illustrator that you might use during school, sometimes you don't have time for that. You have to kind of get down and dirty with the Microsoft Word and smaller programs, but you want to be up to speed with all of that because somebody will ask you to do something and then they want it done in 5 minutes.
I think it's also, I think it's to that point, I think it's a really interesting time to develop your presentation, right? Like think about what that interview is going to be like if you can get it, you know, because it's going to be on a different, it's going to be through a different means, right? It could potentially be like this. I mean, we've certainly had interviews with clients through Zoom. So how do you present yourself and be able to project who you really are, which is an art to a certain extent, right? I mean, this is a very different platform from being able to read the physical cues that you can when you're sitting face to face with somebody. So I think that would be a really, really good, that's going to showcase your skills and who you are. So I would highly recommend that you really spend a little time. You may be able to integrate some of that knowledge into that presentation. And it also shows that you're thinking about the entire process as a creative person.
Very interesting points. So the next question, I think we're going at the right pace. And please, if even if the question is not directed to you, please feel free to chime in. But the next question is for Brian and Marlon. And the question is, do you have any suggestions for how students should adapt to their job search in light of the recession? Of course, these questions are somewhat connected, right? But they sort of come from slightly different perspectives in terms of what the question is. For those that graduated during previous recessions, so I know that some of us have experienced the 2008 one, and there was the 1991, and so different recessions date each of us in different ways. But can you offer any tips or advice? I mean, Brian, I know that you graduated from the GSD right after the 2009 recession. That's why I thought this would be a good question for you. But I know that others with more experience in the industry might have some ways to help our students think about it, because to them, this really feels unprecedented in so many different ways.
Yeah, I can lead off with that. So to date Igor even more, Igor was my TA almost 20 years ago. So, and look what I've become now. Yeah, so as Igor mentioned, I was wrapping up my master's thesis in 2008, right when everything started to go down. And this is after, at this point, 8 years of design studies, and everyone was kind of in this sort of similar position of panic. And our career services person pulled us together and didn't really know what to say. So as a side note, Julie, Igor, this whole team, like what you're doing right now is so thoughtful and so wonderful. And I wish I had something similar sort of 12 years ago. But their advice really boiled down to, we hope you have other skills you could fall back on. And at the time, it was kind of an alarming thing to hear, because I was like, oh man, my other skills are piano and literature, and I'm not sure sort of how I'm going to forge my way, sort of forge a career in the design profession with those things. But that was always this lingering thing in the back of my mind. And I really didn't have the option of not working. So I really started to explore all the things I could do with my design skill set right away. And it really took sort of a resilient attitude, and it took a humility as well. I mean, you have to tell yourself you're not above anything at this point, right? Use this as an opportunity to test out as many things as possible. So sort of at one point in 2009, 2010, I was prototyping toys for a toy maker. I was a model maker for a small boutique firm in San Francisco. I worked in retail, and I was playing piano at events. And it seemed totally scattered at the time, but many years later, I'm now seeing how the people I met in those sort of respected gig jobs, and it really was stringing things together month to month for a while, have constituted a large part of my network here in San Francisco. And many of them have been sort of return players, sort of as I navigated the design industry here. So my advice is really explore sort of the full breadth of your skill set, even things that may be a little unexpected, and just, approach these things with humility and positivity. And it's a leap of faith, but I think many of you will find in the long term that these things will really benefit you.
Agreed. I think students should actually realize that they're in a unique position. I mean, we're in a difficult time, but they're in a really, really unique position to reinvent the new normal and to actually dictate what we're up against. I mean, it's good to think outside the box and to take anything that you feel passionate about. I mean, it might not be your skill set, but later on in life, it's going to be beneficial to you down the road. I mean, I've been a translator for Loud Records. I've worked for sneaker companies. I worked in sneaker shops. I know everything about a shoe. I know everything about a lot of music, and that's all been influential in my approach to design. And when I started in the design world, that was 2001, after coming back from Japan for 4 years, and then Germany, then Spain, then ended up back in New York. And every time I look back now on when I'm interacting with customers or clients or what have you, I mean, I think about everything that I've done to get me to this place. And I realize that 85% of it has nothing to do with design. It has to do with passion. And I think all of those things that you choose will help you later on in this difficult time, because it's changing rapidly, and it's, you know, it's very scary when you think about how the market has changed, especially for interior design, because it used to be a time where I like to tell younger students to, once you get into that position when you're trying to build a client base and trying to make a name for yourself, always be able to say no and be confident in yourself. You know, it's everyone wants to have a client that loves them and respects everything that they do, but you can't take on a client that says, I want my house to look like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, but I only have $10,000. You have to say no. You know, you have to be okay with it. And I think if you take jobs that aren't really your skill set, but you're passionate about, it's going to help you later on. So, you know, like you were saying, you're not above anything. Just take the job, learn from it, focus on it, be passionate about it, and everything else will work itself out. We got a lot to do. It's gonna be a hard road, you know. And I mean, I don't come from a big firm or anything like that. So, you know, I come from small companies. I have objects in general. That's my passion. But I'm also head of trade, residential trade for Tom Dix in New York. So it's and it's the best of both worlds. I get to have fun. I get to do a lot of beautiful things, but it all stems from taking that chance of doing something outside of my comfort zone. And I think they have to.
I think that's exactly the right attitude. And it just helps to know that, you know, you're not going to screw anything up right now. Like, you have years and years to sort of figure out what you want to do in the design profession. So just embrace that, right? There are like very few bad choices you can make. There are some, but really just take risks because they will only sort of expand your universe instead of limiting it.
Exactly.
I actually wanted to add something because I'm really going to date myself here. I graduated at the '90 recession. And I remember I was working in New Haven and I got let go because their fees dried up and I went on unemployment. And I remember distinctly, I'm like, I am standing in the unemployment line and I have a graduate degree from Yale. It's very humbling. I really liked, Brian, what you said about humility, because I think that's important to remember, you know, that to keep that sense about you, that you're incredibly lucky to have gotten the education that you got.
Right.
You're already way beyond so many other people. You will land on your feet. And, you I ended up opening up my own business, and, that was my response. So, but then also be open to change, because, it's like your passion and you never know what may be around the corner. So I think just remember, you're already a step ahead.
Right.
It's true that we think about careers in a kind of singular way, but really it's the sum of so many different things. And in these kind of more turbulent times, kind of embracing that approach is something that, I mean, we certainly forget about in some of our conversations with our students, right? And when we're talking about career services, when we're talking about internships, we tend to think of it in a kind of singular way, the job. But maybe that's also generational. Maybe our students are actually much more flexible about it than we are in a way, but it's a really, really helpful to hear these thoughts. So I think one other kind of question that I think this, Laura already talked about this a little bit, but maybe just to touch upon it a little bit, because I know that students are kind of always anxious to want to ask this question. So I will just say it one more time. And then you can chime in. So what advice do you have for interior design graduates to stand out from the crowd in a time when so many firms are limiting hiring? And I think that this is, we talked a little bit about this, like what does a Zoom meeting look like? What does a Zoom interview look like? We talked a little bit about PowerPoint as this kind of the zine format of our generation, or but what other tips might there be for students to be able to distinguish themselves? I mean, I think that that's something that everyone thinks about, from graphics to skills. We live in this kind of mass customized age where there is this kind of hunger for kind of authenticity. So are there any thoughts, like how else can we connect to kind of students' questions about this? Because this is something that they really want to hear more about. So maybe Primo, Laura, Jennifer, I think that this is kind of an open question, and I think it's really helpful to have participants from kind of different areas within the field to kind of engage with that question.
Yeah, I think when we're looking for designers, talent, we want you. We love people with outside experience or outside. We don't want it always to be about design. So if you have art, or if you have music, or if you have something that another interest, because we feel like a full designer is well-rounded. There's a lot to being a designer, and it's a long road. So everybody who's been here, I hung pictures, I made coffee, I ran the library in my first job, I made furniture, I built things. Before O+A ever became O+A, I did kind of everything. And I think you have to be ready to do everything. So we're looking for that kind of character that is like willing to do all those different things. And then, when we're looking at your work, it's really, be honest about what you did in your portfolio. Don't make stuff up. You'll be found out real quick. If those aren't your drawings, just let us know, because we will find your training. We're looking for that. So sell yourself in an appropriate way. We want people who are honest and really kind of understand their strengths and weaknesses. And it's that character that we're looking for. So, and then be willing to jump in and do anything. Do not cherry pick. The minute you cherry pick and put yourself in that position, you'll be labeled that the rest of your time at that practice, because they will know, oh, they don't do that. Never put yourself in that category, because it's hard to get rid of that. And I think we all know, we've worked with people like that, and it's like, you just don't want to give, you just feel, how can they be so short-sighted? Because to learn this field, to learn this industry, it takes decades. It takes a long time. You're responsible for a lot of information, and to learn it, you have to take your time. hopefully you have good mentorship and you know, be honest and just go in there and really really tackle it and try to make yourself better.
Yeah, my dad used to say responsibilities aren't given, they're taken.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
Really is. Show the initiative. Absolutely.
Certainly agree with that. Jennifer, would you like to jump in before?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how I'm going to answer this question, but I think I might hijack it. Would that be okay?
I'm not in charge.
Please.
Why not? You know,
Okay.
we are all improvising here. We're asking our students to do it, so I think we can do it too.
Okay. So, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't really I wouldn't hire students right now, but I hire consultants every day. So I do hire students and designers because I'm constantly searching for the best teams possible to put them on, you know, in my humble opinion, really great projects. And so we invest a lot in think phase work right now and always. And I hope your students know what that means. Clay, I hope you've taught them well. But so, you know, there's like a groundswell of think phase work, which means that especially right now, post-COVID, and definitely in this Black Lives Matter moment where we're sort of redefining concepts of what safety and security means, you know, shifting from physical state to emotional state, we need people who can kind of like come with and think big like this as they lean into design, not just people who present tangible outcomes. So when we're interviewing designers and trying to determine if they're qualified or interesting, or can come with us on these design problems, we want to know that they have the ability to produce amazing work as a bare minimum, but have the kind of intellectual ability to track on this, or just simply engaged in a way that they want to, you know, dive in on these big, wicked problems. So, you know, things I'd want to say to designers that are graduating or near graduation is it is definitely worth investing or reinvesting a little bit more on topics around certainly health, but around behavioral science, you know, environmental psychology, the stuff that's going to get you there. Because I am totally convinced that this is really where all design is going.
Mhm.
That wasn't hijacking at all. That was in line with the conversation. But I think a really, really great way to really kind of expand the discussion. And I think that I think students will really enjoy or are really enjoying, I would imagine, hearing this, because many of them have invested quite a bit of their own resources in learning in this way. And so I think it's really good to get the validation that this really matters, right? In the world that talks about construction documents only, or, you know, you can only get a job if you know how to detail, you know. So I think that this is, and it's all important, right? But I think that they will be very, very happy to hear that,
really
because I think
matters.
many students are really interested in engaging this way. So thank you for saying that. And for, yeah, that's really great. So now we shift gears a little bit, and I think that this maybe is now kind of a reflection on where you are as businesses and as employers and as practitioners. And so our students wanted to know, so for those of you working, leading firms or being a part of firms, if you could share what you've been hearing from your clients in terms of what kind of projects are continuing and which ones are being put on hold. It's not, you know, I think that that's something that our students would like to know. For example, what has stopped and what is still moving, and how can you take stock of that situation right now relative to kind of client activity? Primo, you touched on that early on, but can we talk about it a little bit more?
Sure.
So maybe, you know, and all of you, Primo, Laura, Lewi, Laura, Britt, Robin, you're all a part of kind of firms that employ people that are responsible, that are working with clients who are kind of directing some of this reality as well based on their resources. So where do we stand there?
Well, you know, this has really changed. There's going to be distributed work is going to be a real thing, right? We know that work from home is absolutely possible. And we know that the earth has healed a little bit because we haven't gone into the commute and we haven't done all these things that, you know, we didn't think we could do. So we're going to reimagine the workplace. We're going to reimagine where things are done. It's going to give opportunities for designers like yourself coming out of school to kind of very, you know, touch on those humanistic aspects of design. You know, I know Tammy teaches a great interiors course that does touch on psychology and the kind of the human condition in space. And the power that design has, especially interiors, is, you know, it mentors, it brings back humanity, it teaches people how to treat each other. In a lot of ways, that's where people learn some of this stuff because they spend so much time there. So you are now in control of that. So what you bring to the table is exactly that. If you're understanding and you understand the power of what design can really manifest, then you are that much better because you will learn the skills and you learn, you know, what good design looks like, but you got to learn kind of what the power and the potential is. And that is something that I think we're going to get an opportunity because we're going to have a new workplace. Corporate headquarters may change forever. We may not have workforces coming in. We may have certain groups coming in and they may come in at different times. I think eventually as a vaccine and things will get back a little bit to normal, but they will never get back to the normal that it was before. It's just going to be a different time. And you get to design in that time. You get to design for those new spaces and those new opportunities. So to me, it's actually a fascinating time that, you know, the next 6 months, it's sort of a wait and hold. It's very kind of tense. People don't know quite what to do, but after that, there's going to be a groundswell of opportunity. So I would say kind of like, look at the things that are really important, health and well-being, obviously, keep your design skills up but there's going to be a lot of new opportunity because it's going to change. It's going to be more distributed. So it's going to be more opportunities in home office designs, in the suburbs, as well as the urban core. All these things need to be designed, and you will be the generation that's working on that next phase of workplace, the next chapter of it.
Yeah, I actually think this is an amazing time. I think the opportunities are off the charts. And it's very exciting that you guys are getting in at the base of this. I mean, we've seen, you know, projects went on pause, but we've also seen a number of RFPs come through the office, and we're finding that really across the board, I mean, transportation, workplace, residential development, institutional work, it's all there. Some of it is sort of hanging there, waiting to fall, right? While people get wits and their bearings set. But I think what is so exciting is that everybody realizes that we cannot go back. There is no turning back. And this younger generation is not going to allow us to go back. And I am so inspired by what has been happening because, you know, my husband teaches younger people, and I, you know, as I said, I've taught before. The thing that he keeps hearing, you know, we just want to burn it all down because why not? And I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? I think the environment is doing that for us with this virus. It's essentially burning it all down. And I think that what will remain are the core significant values that are human-centric, right? That are related to how we communicate with each other and how we work with each other and how we are, it's a culture hopefully that is coming that is more about listening to people. And I think one of the things that's really important to understand too is that you shouldn't set your sights just on the big cities. right? Because I actually think that this is a fantastic time for these smaller, super vibrant cities. I'm going to give a little plug to Detroit. That is an awesome place that is really cooking for some time now. It's a fighter and it's a survivor, and it's on its way back. But there are multiple cities like this, and I like Pittsburgh and, you know, smaller cities in the South and in the West, and where, because, you know, the reality is a lot of people are sort of, you know, they're a little shell shocked and a little scarred by this. So maybe the big city experience isn't necessarily the first thing on everybody's list. That's fantastic for the country in general and for the culture that we can create through these smaller, vibrant cities, because it will give you the opportunity to actually make a difference. It's going to be easier for you to make a bigger difference in these smaller cities. I mean, that's just reality. And I think that is where there's some really exciting potential.
So Robin, I'm happy you brought up the market perspective. That's what I was going to bring up as well. I mean, it's amazing how it varies so wildly from market to market in terms of their outlook on growth. And it requires looking at those cities that are really like looking to invest a lot in building and businesses and infrastructure. And right before this whole thing went down, I was lucky enough to sort of take on 2 new clients, one in Denver and one in San Francisco, not one in San Francisco, one in Las Vegas, both of which have been very bullish on bringing tech into their cities and really rethinking sort of how the future of all these industries of work, of retail, of entertainment, and are putting a lot of design time and construction time into those and don't want this moment to pause. So where a lot of the larger cities like New York and, you know, I hate to say San Francisco are, you know, pausing and reconsidering, it's really full steam ahead in other markets. So in addition to sort of looking at these variations between industries, I would definitely sort of explore geographies that may be a little unexpected as well.
That's a great point too.
I think it's very interesting when the question was asked. I think the assumption was that the answer would be about project typology, but actually it's about geography, and I think that's very interesting, and I think a way for students to position themselves or to think about the problem in a different way.
You know, Igor, that brings up, if I might add just a little bit of what we've been discussing at our firm is this intentional diversity. And that can mean a lot of things, right? But for us, having both a residential and a commercial component to our work, the diversity of our project types has really been a strength for us right now. And I'm super grateful for that. We're working on higher educational projects. We're working on hospitality type multifamily. We're working on some high-rise office type space. We're also doing just new build multifamily. And we've been fortunate, anything that's under construction or anything that's funded or moving forward with design has still been moving forward. So I think just to be more pragmatic maybe in an answer for the students, although I've heard a lot of hospitality has been hit pretty hard, hotels and restaurants, obviously, we're actually looking at a very large hospitality project. So it's hard to say that one complete segment of our market is completely quiet. There's always an outlier to that. So I would say students remain open and pursue your passion, as we've talked about here today. I do see the residential market stands very strong. We continue to get an enormous amount of new work and interest, and are in a position, thankfully, to be able to say no to projects. I think Marlon was mentioning earlier, you know, if it's just not going to be a successful opportunity, there's no point in engaging in it. And so it's nice to understand that at this age and at this stage. It took a while, a few hard knocks to get there. But, you know, today we were on the phone with a doctor from MD Anderson, and we've been working with her, who's very health conscious about the way that she's designing her space. And now that she and her husband are working from home, it's how do we modify this to actually work for us working from home? And so I think Primo alluded to that earlier. There's a lot of rethinking of space and reutilization of space, and especially with all of us in our family units being home so much more. There's just a lot of new and different opportunities, I think, that are still out there. But we do see the residential market is still holding very strong. And I think there's maybe some divergence in whether students are that interested in the residential market or they're more interested in commercial. But that's something that I would say to consider. You know, I think that a lot of our residential projects end up being more like commercial buildings these days than they used to be because of scope and scale. But we are still seeing a lot of our segments are still very strong. I think higher ed has gotten a little bit quiet because of funding. I think a lot of people just don't know what's going to happen. You know, are students coming back? I mean, that's maybe something, you know, the professors here could talk about a bit. Are students coming back to campus? How will that impact the types of projects that will be done on university campuses? Our projects, thankfully, are funded, and so they're moving forward, but I think some have not been.
Laura, you're in New York, Laura Lewi, and in your practice, in your work, you focus on the retail sector mainly. What is your perspective on what's going on? As you know, as a graduate of our program, you know that there are always students who are kind of interested in retail as a kind of area within our field. What would you say to them in terms of what is the activity now, and what are some of the projections in your kind of part of the industry, and what kinds of conversations are happening in your office in terms of what's happening, what's changing, and what's stopping?
In terms of retail in our office, nothing is completely stopped. A lot of it is construction stopped for the time being, but it's actually picked back up now. We have Major League Baseball opening in September. We have Tempur-Pedic opening and all of those things are full steam ahead. We're designing new digital components that work just to keep people safer in the store, that they don't have to touch screens. They can use their own devices. So I'm thinking at how to make people feel really, really safe environments. New, or I guess the change. So nothing has stopped. I think a lot of the level opportunities are that they're having time to focus on design. We're doing a lot of that we didn't have time to focus on before. So in this slow pace, we're able to do a lot of big moves that can roll out in the future, especially for the big brands that are able to do so. Like retail banking is not going anywhere. A lot of the things that kind of have a stable foot in the marketplace. We think that people are going to continue to shop. I mean, people like to feel products, and they're going to be excited to get out of the house again. It's going to be a new lease after lockdown. We just kind of have to get through it. So we're not terribly worried. Work has been a little bit slow, but we're pulling in work from other markets. We're working with our London office, our China office, now that they're reopened. So it's just made our firm a lot more internationally collaborative, which has actually been really exciting. And especially since we're all working from home, it's made it a lot easier to kind of force those connections through IT and just through relationships. It's been interesting, definitely.
So that's an interesting kind of unintended consequences, that the kind of nature of collaboration has changed, and the geography is not the same kind of factor that it was not that long ago, because of how we are working, which is very.
And it's made us much more eager to work with each other. I think before, just the time zoning and everything made it harder to work in the office, but if you're at home, it's a lot easier to take a 5:30 a.m. conference call because you have all of your things and whatnot, which I did because I'm working with London team today.
That's great. So the next few questions, we'll kind of zoom out and look at the big picture about the kind of future of our field and the kind of career trajectories within that. But I also know that for those students that are watching it right now, it is likely that they had an internship set up. You know, we had our career fair, which Julie coordinates, which just has this incredible abundance of employers, and over recent years, it has been a really abundant field that our students really kind of have accustomed to thinking that, of course, there will be a summer internship, and of course, there will be choice. And really between February 26th and March 12th, like it all really shifted. And so many of our students, most of our students who had internships lined up are now wondering what to do with this kind of new chunk of time. We have been working with them as a program to figure out alternatives to the kind of mainstream professional internship. Organizations like IDEC have kind of come up with the kind of e-internship program as a way to kind of scaffold or to kind of expand what we consider to be this kind of applied and this kind of experience in the field. Do you have any advice for students that are still trying to, it's mid-June, that are still thinking about how to make this time productive, or what options might be? I mean, I'm sure they would love to, you know, be collaborating with the London office while they're in Austin, but, you know, for most of them, and maybe there are some paths to that, and if there are, you'll have to share them with us, but are there other ways that we can see this time that our students and also us as a program can kind of understand how to make this time productive? We've talked about this to some degree already, but just, I was just wondering if there are any other sort of paths, kind of codified paths right now that that you've either seen
and I'll second
kind
that.
of support.
I'll second that. We have students asking right now, it's this point in the summer, is there anything, any opportunities? So yeah, we would love to hear from y'all.
You know, I actually think it might be worth reaching back out, and myself included, because I had a UT Austin intern all lined up, and then when you didn't have an office or the task that you had set up for the summer is gone, you kind of go, what are we going to do with this person? But I actually think now firms have gotten into the swing of Zoom. Now they kind of know how to utilize resources. Maybe if the intern is willing to shadow, and I mean, the problem is that you can't task them with anything because there's no physical place to, you know, usually they start in the library, unfortunately. Usually they start kind of learning the sort of the basics of being in their practice. And then we kind of move them into, you know, maybe working on a drawing set or something like that. But maybe now, maybe readjust, like they can shadow somebody if they're willing to bounce around and be more flexible. I think more firms are better equipped to kind of dole out the work from a Zoom meeting, where before we didn't even know how to do it amongst ourselves, to be honest. We've learned to be very good at Zoom in the last 9.5 weeks. So I think actually it might be worth reaching out. In fact, you know, I'm thinking that I'll reach back out to Tammany to see if we can do something, because I know it was unfortunate not being able to bring on an intern, and I know they depend on that. And some firms might find a way for them to shadow somebody just so they can learn over the summer.
And that's very good to hear. You know, I think that students that have pursued some of these opportunities might be hesitant to follow up, but actually you're right, a lot has changed in terms of how we have handled working in this way. Jennifer?
You should re-engage. I agree with Primo, because I am seeing such a radical shift, even in the way like in the last 4 weeks, in the way that projects are coming back online.
Yep.
And, you know, frankly, it all trickles down from big industry. So, you know, we went back online and we started manufacturing, guys, which is like the green light for businesses back on, y'all.
Yep.
Starts from there. So, you know, things really are starting to open up again. Our projects are starting to roll back on, which means we're re-engaging consultants, which means they're re-engaging their designers, which means they're hiring again. And so, you know, I would stay in regular contact and keep asking. Don't back off. So that things, certainly. Don't be shy on that.
Yeah, to that end, like everyone's at peak empathy right now. Because this is, you just have to acknowledge that this is weird for everyone. It's weird for us, it's weird for our clients, it's weird for all of you. So it's a magical moment where we're all in the same boat. And I think everyone has this great, like, it's feeling this like patience and empathy and kindness that we're sort of collectively experiencing that hasn't happened in a while. So now is the time to follow up, because I think we all want to be helpful to each other as a community. So I think that's a great idea.
I think also, Jennifer, and I don't know if you can hear them, but it's the 7 o'clock. We have.
Oh, yeah. The healthcare tribute, health workers tribute. Yeah.
Right.
But Jennifer said a word that I think is really provocative, and that is industry. I think that having watched how industries in places like Detroit and other sort of industrial, traditionally industrial cities, right, that were really, they thrive on their industrial cores. I think it's very interesting. Those industries are really interested and in need of in-house people that can help them navigate through, you know, their own workplace, there are lots of opportunities, I think, that can be uncovered if you know, this idea of expanding your perspective. And I think that's one that often goes overlooked, is this idea of working for a company that actually, like a manufacturer, you know, I mean, I don't think it doesn't cut across all industries, but I think if you do a little research, you'll find that there are, you know, or actually government. I had a conversation with Frank Lupo, who is someone who, you know, worked for Charlie Guathami's office and then had his own firm and then worked at other firms. And he's actually working for the government now. He reviews all of the embassy work, right? And I know that they are looking for people. So,
Robin, I would second that. After, you know, I had that same experience. Something that you don't necessarily think about are other sectors. So I think that's one thing to note, students, is that you don't necessarily have to go only to a firm. I mean, look at what Jennifer's doing. I actually worked for the Air Force Academy on amazing international style SOM buildings as a fresh graduate. So I was, you know, fortunate in that regard that I was in a little jewel box of government, right? Not every building is that beautiful, but certainly open up your perspectives and look in places you wouldn't necessarily look. The government is a great place, especially the embassy work would be really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So I think
another great resource I would say is get to know your vendors locally, because they know who has work, because they're who is ordering product and who's speccing product, and they seem to know well within the industry, and those relationships are really important as you grow. So those vendors can become your best friend, and that's honestly who you get to know in those first internships anyway, working in the material library. So if you can reach out to those people.
Yeah, Marlon, I think you can speak to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to step outside your comfort zone, basically. You know, you keep reaching out to people, you want to not be forgotten. You want to keep pushing. You want people to know that you're there. And there's so much going on that, you know, people that were going for internships, they just think that people forgot about them, but they really didn't. It's just so much going on. So, like, you know, just keep at it, keep calling, keep just looking at everything that's out there. Don't leave any stone unturned. I mean, there's still a lot of people willing to hire you, and you're in a position where you can actually show yourself. You know, you can. I find that what I've been doing during all this. I mean, I have a 5-month-old son, and what I found myself doing is building toys and making and building things and making things and reading more books, reading about more designers that I had no idea were out there, watching more documentaries, we forget about all these things that we don't really have to leave the house to do. You know, we can learn so much more about our craft and build our skill set right at home and build up all of that confidence. So just keep looking at everything that's right in front of you. It's so much more that we can be doing. You know, don't be scared to keep calling. Don't be scared to don't be deterred when someone says, oh, we're not looking for someone, or when they only have enough room to hire, a budget to hire only 3 students, or to bring on 3 interns. I mean, you have another firm out there, a firm that you weren't thinking about, or a firm that everyone else isn't talking about. Choose that firm. You know, you never know what you can bring to the table for that firm. It's so many places that you can go. So just keep at it. Keep at it, keep at it. It's a long road. You know, it doesn't happen overnight. And should we be scared? I mean, it's a scary thing. You know, you're students, you're young, you're coming out to all of this craziness, but just remember, it's also a time of change, and that you're part of that change, and just stay positive. Just stay positive and keep reaching out. I mean, it's when I look out and I see the world and see how it's changing and evolving, and how it's going to be, if it's ever going to be like it used to be. And I realized that I don't really think I want it to be. I want it to be different. I want to see how it looks when things are not so compact or spread out, when there's a different way, a different approach to entering a building, or how you're going to make more than 10 people fit into a building, fit into a retail space without everyone freaking out. How are you going to make that look good? How are you going to make people feel comfortable? How are you going to feel safe going into a building? The way that we've always done things. How are you going to feel comfortable sitting at a desk when someone's 2 feet, you're used to someone being right next to you. Now someone is 6 feet apart from you, or 12 feet apart from you. How are we going to do this? And I think when you sit down and you think about ways to implement these changes, you bring that to the table. You bring those thoughts to the people that you want to work for. And who knows who you're going to get on that phone? Who knows who you're going to talk to that says, wow, I never thought of that. I never thought of putting something over here instead of just putting it, making it, you know, that normal way of thinking. Like, you know, everyone wants everything to be just like that. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And I'm actually loving the situation now. Not the fact that I have you know, I've been fortunate enough to be at home with my son and my wife, and learning new things and learning how to work from home, and it can be done. And I'm happy that I've learned all these different things, and that I've and just to share with students that are, you know, because no one ever did this for me. No one ever, like, I never had anyone talk to me when I was graduating, and when I, you know, we weren't going through that type of time. And I graduated in 1990, but, you know, it was a lot going on. But I think it's cool to be able to talk to students and to ramble, and I'll start rambling now.
I think it's so, you know, one of the questions that was going to come up, but it's already been answered. So you know, and the question was really, how can we as designers engage in the kind of, in things that are adjacent to us or a part of the field, but unseen, not necessarily seen by us. You know, I think when we think about kind of careers and recruitment and all this stuff, we think about the, what it means to kind of obtain a position at a lead designer firm, right? But we've discovered in this conversation, for students, that it's really so many other sectors that are a part of it. So, how can you be a designer from the point of view of kind of product? So kind of thinking about it in the context of vendors, in the context of kind of government projects, in the context of construction management. There's a lot of work to be done if we kind of see. So I think that has been really, so I won't ask that question because I think you've answered it already kind of collectively, which is really amazing. But the question that I would like to ask, and this kind of takes us further sort of projecting on behalf of students, what it might be like to work in this kind of near future. So a number of you are thinking about what your own practices are like in terms of the kind of the physical spaces and the kind of interface with technology. And then people like Brian and others are actively kind of leading the kind of conversation about workplace design within the industry. So the question is, how is this pandemic changing the workplace for years to come? And what kind of workplace do you think future young designers will encounter upon entering the market? I know that Jennifer was really interested in engaging this. I think Robin is interested in engaging this. I think Brian, I think everyone really, this would be a great way to kind of begin to talk about the kind of space that our students and future kind of designers in the workplace will be inhabiting. So maybe we start with Jennifer, if you would like to take this one. I know you were interested in this question, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, thanks, Igor. So I'm interested in this question because for two reasons. One, we're in the process right now of building Ford's New World headquarters, which is 2 million square feet and will host at the beginning of the first phase, 12,000 people, and then it'll go on to 20,000+ people. So we'll say it's a big project. By scale, it's the equivalent of the southern tip of Lower Manhattan. And I'm working on this with Craig Dykers at Snowhetta and a bunch of other very talented consultants. So it's by scale big, it's for a lot of people, it's a very important project for the legacy of Ford Motor Company. But we're in schematic design and then COVID hits. So there are a lot of assumptions, programmatic and architectural, in play that are marching along a really aggressive schedule. And now what do you do? Because the world has changed. And we start receiving a lot of reports and suggestions about what the future looks like. And the decision is made that we really have to think for ourselves on this. So we've designed a framework that is really categorized by now, near, far. And we've assembled a think tank of amazing thought leaders to come and join us to lean in on this topic. And we're going to tackle the near and the far side of the equation. And the belief is that if anybody feeds you an answer, this is answering your question, Igor. If anybody feeds you an answer that is about what workplace of the future looks like definitively as a tangible outcome today, they're full of it because nobody knows.
Right.
Somebody tries to sell you an office solution, don't buy it because nobody knows. Because the behavioral outcomes associated with COVID may be permanent or they may be lasting. Nobody knows. We actually don't know, what the manifestation of these new behaviors will be. We don't know what the lasting imprint is. And so we have to dig down deep into that using science, leading with science, and environmental behavioral thinking, leading with sound research, with thought leaders that are not us as designers, but people that we bring around us to help us design a framework, not a solution. So that when we move into the problem, we have a way that we can think through it, knowing that design is an evolving hypothesis that we can kind of thoughtfully move with it over time. So that's how we're tackling it at the moment. We kick this off next Monday, we hope. But, we'll share our insights with everybody globally, but this is really a big project for us to get ahead of the problem. By problem, I mean like, academic problem. It's a great problem. COVID has provided us with a lot of opportunities on this.
I think it's so interesting right now. I mean, for me in particular, it's, I'm fairly new to the corporate world. I've been at FX for just over a year. And prior to that, I had my own firm, right, which was sort of a boutique firm. We did a lot of retail, actually. And one of the things that I've noticed being in this different environment is how quick everybody is to come up with that answer. It's like everybody wants to be ahead of the game and show that they know what to do, right? And we are getting a lot of people asking us fairly enough, well, what do we do, right? And obviously we address the unique needs of each client, right? Which for some, because of varying levels of comfort, it's going to be different, right? And so I think what is important is to try and, it's going to be important for us all to sort of see through the forest of this information, the weeds of it, right? And really start to understand, well, where are the compelling elements that are going to remain? And we don't really know what those are, but there are some baseline things that I think speak to certain kinds of core values, which has to do with, the emotional sense of people inhabiting these spaces and also the environmental impact. And this is it's actually such a great opportunity for us to finally get some traction on environmental issues because of what has happened, because they are linked. So, I mean, I appreciate what some of these industries have been doing to sort of, okay, there's all this information out there. And it's like, okay, fine, we're aware of all that. Everybody's almost they're saying very similar things, right? So I hear that, I get it, but let's keep going forward. I think the danger in this kind of these blanket statements and solutions is that you miss potentially the opportunities or the realities of what potentially is going to happen. And I think that's something to just keep in mind in terms of how nobody, as Jennifer said, nobody really knows what the long-term impact of this is going to be. Everybody seems to have an answer, which I think is just something to keep in mind. It's like, there is really no specific answer right now. There are certain ideas that are valid, right? Depending on individual levels of comfort for now. But I like the idea of the framework, it's like the infrastructure of it needs to be stable but flexible enough that when something else happens, that it can adapt, right? So it's a very different way of thinking about it. To have that, it's definitely, it's going to be more flexible. And I think that's a really good thing.
No, I think those are both spot on. Am I on? I am on. I think this whole thing has underscored the fact that we don't have, that design teams are going to start to look a lot different. That, we as people who went to normative design programs don't necessarily have the expertise required by ourselves to design the work environments of the future. And that, as Jennifer said, we're not scientists, we're not ethnographers. I mean, maybe some of us are, but it's going to be a really cool moment for us to reevaluate who's on design teams, what expertise we bring in, and have those conversations before we start making hard and fast recommendations about the future of the workplace. So in terms of what we know now, I mean, it's just what we can immediately observe, right? We know that we no longer have to be in the workplace to get work done. I think, we've all, as professionals, realized that we have, with a fair amount of success, been able to sort of navigate collaborative teams and collaborative design work remotely. So the new workplace won't be somewhere where people are working full time. And really, it's just working with experts and social scientists and psychologists to really critically evaluate behaviors that are evolving from this, and not like reactive COVID era behaviors, but really future behaviors of interaction and inclusive environments and equitable conversations. So in my mind, the sort of future workplace really is about equity and like leveling the playing field. I'm having conversations right now about how do you design environments that give everyone sort of a equal seat at the table, regardless of whether you're in the physical workspace or at home, and sort of what role does digital have in that? What do like immersive collaborative environments look like? And the truth is, we're just now figuring this out, and we don't have answers, and are really taking this moment. And again, it's like going back to that humility aspect from before, to sort of admit to ourselves we don't have the answers, and that designing for the future requires teams with a far more expansive expertise. So the future will be digital, it'll be collaborative, it'll be not all happening in the same place. And I think the super exciting part is that we'll have all of you to sort of like join our teams and jumpstart our thinking about this, because it really requires big, bold ideas. And sort of going back to previous threads in this conversation, that's really what we're looking to you to provide, right? Because you're coming into the profession totally unencumbered with ideas of how workplace works or how retail works, at least in a professional environment. So, in terms of thinking about your point of view and your role in the profession moving forward, it's kind of taking the experiences you've had these past few years and realizing that, like, oh my God, like the industry is looking to me at this moment to sort of infuse this kind of design thinking, this really speculative, out-of-the-box design thinking into the conversation we're just now having about the future of work and the future of retail and the future of entertainment, all of those things.
Brian, I think this gets really interesting because for new grads, I've got a dog on my lap, everybody. It's the end of the care to you. But, I'm thinking about, the ways in which new graduates take jobs or accept jobs. What has COVID done for, around issues of presenteeism? For example, at Gensler, you've got so many different offices, you used to have to move to the location, right? But now you could conceivably apply for a job in Minneapolis from Chicago, no problem, and take that job as which is cool because we just crushed through data this idea of presenteeism. That was a hurdle for us 2 months ago. Nobody could pass that culturally. Done. We've moved past it. So there might be new ways to take jobs now or satisfy these different positions. And I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. From just embracing this idea of a liquid workforce where you can embrace opportunities that aren't necessarily in the place that you live, and in the way that it's really empowering people who didn't always have a voice at the table before. The way that we're collaborating right now, I know many of us are using Miro, many of us are using, other sort of digital collaboration software, means that you're able, our world of expression and the ways that we share design ideas has been blown open. So, a conversation that previously would have happened around a tall table and trace paper, where someone was, kind of setting the tone for the conversation, is much more distributed now. right? I mean, now that we're having these conversations in Miro where anyone can contribute at any time in the way that they feel comfortable, I mean, we're having, you know, from wherever geographically they're sitting, we find that we're having a lot richer conversations because of it.
Yeah, I mean, 2 months ago, we didn't know how we were going to be able to have like pinups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pin up, we're not in person. How are we going to pin up? How are we going to have a workshop? We can't do that. We don't have people with materials. Oh, we've got Material Bank from Sandow, thank God. So now we're like shipping materials to each other's houses. And
Right.
we've got Miro and we've got Bluescape. No problem. We figured it out. And it's like, you know, the deck of cards. What are we doing? Are we doing Zoom? Are we doing WebEx? Are we doing Ring Central? What is it? What is it? So, you know, we adapted, you know, in about a week, we were all back up to speed.
Yeah, I think it's this
Totally.
dissolving of the boundaries that is really fantastic. I think that I mean, this is the opportunity that this kind of format and this kind of situation environment really forces on us. But the fact that you can be in multiple places and that you don't have to necessarily pull up your roots and you can be part of the conversation across the globe, really. And that's what this is. It's a very interesting dynamic that as all of the countries have been shutting down, right, in a sense, our industry is having the opposite experience. We're actually like expanding our boundaries and being able to work cross-culturally, cross-globally. You know, this is, I think it says a lot about the profession in that, you know, while everybody else is shutting down, we're actually like exploding, which is
Well, it seems like we are just warming up, and it's really, I think, now we don't need questions because I think we're having an actual conversation, which is really exciting to be able to do that in this space. I wanted to, I don't want to let you off the hook just yet, because I think that there are a couple of things, Clay, I wanted to know if there are any sort of, among the questions, I think many of them have been kind of sifted through the conversation already. Yep. So, but I wanted to know if there are any other kind of thoughts that students shared with us that you'd like to share with the panel. And then Julie has one particular comment and question from YouTube that she would like to share at the tail end of that. And so that's kind of what the next few minutes look like. And then you will be off the hook, I promise.
No, I think, honestly, I really believe that most of the student questions have been answered. I mean, there was a big concern about this question of what happens now, and I think y'all have done a really nice job of framing the immediate concerns for students in terms of how they can navigate this immediate problem. What's been interesting is that you've also begun to sort of tap into some of the questions that I thought were a little bit more open-ended in terms of the students, in terms of what happens in the space between if you don't have a gig? What do you do at that time? And I think you've really done a good job of framing that for them as well. The notion of remote work is one that came up. I think that was just really well answered and discussed as well. For me, I think maybe a couple of a comment or two, if I may, but the one thing I've taken from this, and I really wish we could continue this over a series of these, because I think this has been so insightful and exciting and really, really interesting and timely. But what is really exciting to me, and the students that have had me in pro practice know this is a saw of mine, but that what all of you have kind of described is that design actually is a way of navigating the moment right now, not just for firms, but for individuals and students. It's a way of thinking about the moment and how they address the opportunities, the threats, and the overall just instability of the situation. And so I really appreciate everyone's kind of input on that kind of like topic, because the students often think about their work and getting a job in a very pragmatic way, and it's totally understandable. But that design at the foundation of everything that they've learned at UT actually is the thing that is the value that they can get and move forward through their career with. And I think I really appreciate that. And I could go on, but I really have enjoyed listening to each one of y'all, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Julie, did you want to share with us?
Sure. All right. So I had this comment come in from one of our students. It says, "Thank you to every single one of you. This has been extremely insightful for us." So thank you all. Jennifer, I remember during your keynote at ASID, you told us to go places where we are rare. Would this be that moment?
I think so. I think this is a leveraging opportunity. I really do. I think that this is, you know, a moment where you're sort of looking out and identifying those fissures and cracks that weren't there previously. So, you know, I do talk about this a lot, that you look for the skill that is translatable, and then you apply that in multiple contexts. So what is translatable from design, from that thing that we do? And that is creative problem solving skills, really good ones. And, you know, this unique ability to advocate for the human being in every context, that's unique to us. And the fact that everybody wants a piece of that right now. So, you know, you hear this, this conversation about, you know, in multiple spaces around this just desire for human experience design. And so, you know, seek that out and see how that can be, how you can apply your unique skills to that ask. And it doesn't, you know, you don't want to hear this, but it doesn't have to be in design proper or in a design firm or anything like that, you know, and you can still get amazing applicable design experience or job experience that you can bring back. Trust me on this. Who said it before? Brian, did you say this? Like, you can't go wrong right now. You're just starting out. And I, you know, my hypothesis is that design is changing so radically right now that our industry isn't going to look the same in the next 10 years. And so, you know, seek out those opportunities in in totally different sectors if you need to, where you can apply your skills and get a great job. It might not even be advertised as interior design, who cares? Just see where you apply those skills.
So really great and inspiring comments, and this really doesn't seem like a moment for closing comments. It seems like an opening, really, of a much bigger discussion. But I didn't want to see if any of you had some comments to kind of leave us with for today. We hope that this will be one of a series of conversations virtually and in person. So I expect to see you at our final reviews at some point, especially if you haven't been with us in a while or ever. You will get that invitation. There might be others as well. But in the meantime, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity before I thank you again for participating to just chime in with kind of final comments for the day.
I think one thing I wanted to encourage the students is to remember, be helpful. This is a time that you can be helpful. And that can be something as small as a conversation you have with a principal of a firm, and you know they need a piece of information, and you follow up and you offer that tidbit. We had an interview with someone the other day, a very, very experienced veteran in the hospitality field, and she knew we were looking at this particular project. She followed up. She sent us a link to an article that was incredibly helpful. Do what you can to be helpful. You know, you are just starting out in the field. Be open to all kinds of opportunities, but make yourself useful, make yourself helpful would be my advice.
I would say right now in this weird digital world that there's nothing more important than being extra personal. My favorite thing to do after an interview is send snail mail. So maybe you aren't sending a handwritten note to somebody's house right now, but you can write them a handwritten note and take a picture of it and email it to them. But especially in our world, seeing somebody's hand and knowing that you put that extra thought is really special. my boss still has my handwritten note on his desk that I wrote him after my interview.
It's so sweet.
You know, I think there's so much information out there, and so many paths that you could take, and it can be a little overwhelming at times, I think, particularly at this stage in your career. But I do think that this is a really excellent moment to try and understand what really matters to you, right? And to ask yourself that question, and that may be that there's an opportunity, as we've said many times during this discussion, that just comes, and it's not something that you expected, and it's not necessarily something that you would have considered beforehand, but it feels right at this moment. You know, there is, I'm a strong believer that design is in everything. I send out a weekly inspiration to my team, and it's all over the map. I mean, it's microscopic images of things, it's history, it's photography, it's fashion, it's, you know, it's everything, including the kitchen sink probably. And because I do think that, but you have to find, and I think Marlon spoke to this early on too, it's like, what is your passion? Because it's going to take a little time for you to sift through the weed of all the information that's out there, but nothing is lost. And I think you take an opportunity when it arises, because it may lead you someplace where you didn't expect it to lead. You know, I've had a very unusual career that was not traditional at all. And every single step of the way, I learned something, and it feeds me today. So keep your doors open.
Yeah, to that, I would add, right, just remember that this is weird for all of us, all of you, all of us on this roundtable, and just embrace that weirdness and stay as positive as you can. Like it might get frustrating at times over the next few months, but I'm really excited for where we'll come out at the end of this. It'll look a lot different. And, you know, I think it's a real radical, it'll be a radical shift that I think you should all look forward to in a great way. So yeah, embrace the weird, keep it positive. And I'm really looking forward to sort of having all of you sort of join the industry.
And just don't remember the reason why you got into it in the first place. You know, it's going to be an interesting new time, but what you should do is you should write down 3 things that inspire you. And then once you look at them all, then just ball them up and throw them in the garbage, because you'll find that once you go out every day, and if you're really looking, you'll find something every day that inspires you and will keep you focused and will keep you on that path. So just keep looking for the good, and you'll be fine.
And Michelle joined us with the video. Thank you for being with us, Michelle, as well, for being a part of this group. So thank you so much. I know that these work days have no beginning and no end. And we really appreciate that you took the time, this big chunk of time of this Wednesday to be with our students. It's a real commitment, and it's so generous and so kind, and really inspiring. So we will be in touch, and we will continue to engage with you, and we will continue to have this conversation in different ways. So did you have anything else, Julie or Clay?
I'll just add that I really enjoyed this conversation, and I thank each of you for taking time out of your day. It really is helpful. And I loved some of the comments you said about reaching out, because some of our students are so hesitant to reach out and network if they haven't heard back in a while. And so that was really encouraging. So again, thank you. We appreciate it.
And I
You might
just
be
wanted
hearing from a number of
Thank you
them.
to all of you. Thank you so much. It's been really a fantastic conversation. And like Igor suggested, we will definitely be back in touch with each of you in different ways. So looking forward to continuing to talk to you. Bye-bye.
And I just wanted to add in that I got kicked off the internet 2 different times this evening. So I'm looking forward to watching this later on YouTube, but it was remarkable. And, you know, we owe you thanks in so many different ways. We owe you thanks for participating tonight, for the amazing advice you've given, but also for your leadership within this field, as that influences everything that we do, everything that we teach. And you're part of shaping the future that our students will be contributing to going forward. Some of you I know, others I'm looking forward to having a chance to talk with more, if it's not on a Zoom review coming up soon, hopefully in person at some point. But this was just fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Great to see you all. This is really nice.
Thank you so much, Igor.
I'm going to try to do
Thank you, Igor. Thanks,
a
everyone.
print screen picture. Hold on. I want to. Okay. Got it. Thank you all.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Igor.
night.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to meet you, Jennifer. Great to see you, Laura.
Thanks, Igor. Bye,
Marlon.
Michelle. Bye,
I
Clay.
hope your son didn't wake up in the middle of this.
No, he was good.
He's
Thanks.
sleeping. That's good. All right. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us again. Really nice of you.
Fabulous, just fabulous.
Robin, great to see you.